So like I've been trying to make banana bread for like years, and I've been quite hit and miss. But I hit a certain point where I was improving, and the texture was getting really really good and stuff, and going through the general tropes that you do as you grow up and become a better home baker of sorts. And then I moved to a new house, obviously in third year, and I think I've just gotten worse at baking. Either that or I just haven't practiced enough. But then again, like my housemate kind of agrees with me in the sense that our cooker just doesn't seem that good, and we haven't got like the. I think it's better to get for to go for like metal materials in order to bake things. And because of this, the quality of my baking, despite my skill, maybe experience being higher than it was say last year, has actually dropped overall. But despite this, I still try and produce some decent banana bread. It's okay. It's all right. Do the job. We'll do the job. Um, but yeah, let me just kind of hungry. Sorry. I did some thinking once more, and I thought about this whole idea about how persons they face adversity and overcoming it, especially when it comes to the case of like like where I went back to when I talked about like negative and positive privileges. So the negative privileges, the things that should not exist, prejudice, for example, against a certain group of people or certain other, what I say, generally what people would say, unfair adversities. And often my response to this, or at least what I've seen to be my culture, is try to aim to like kind of just outperform people. So in a sense, it's like despite the heavy adversity that generally doesn't seem like it's a realistic amount to be expected to be overcome, you still put in the maximum effort possible, and then you still try and do as much as humanely possible. In this sense, you attempt to become the Ubermensch, who is this unkillable demon king of sorts. I mean, an easy example is like Russell Westbrook, for example, this year, who's trapped, trapped for what 20 million a year on an average team, and has fought and seemingly tirelessly put the effort in to drag his team up into a playoff position. Of course, much more normal circumstances is the average person, or maybe a minority or person who faces things like stereotype threat, and how they overcome their own internalized issues and the discrepancy between them and their counterparts. Easy examples are like BAME persons at university, I don't know, women in certain workplaces, men in certain workplaces, like the male nurse, the male, I don't know, caretaker role, or the female professor, for example. These are the cases where stereotype threat and on top of the general adversity of just doing the job, because most jobs aren't easy, there's often this additional adversity that one has to overcome, although arguably you shouldn't have to, because you say in an ideal world it would not be the case that this adversity exists. In response to this, obviously I look to overcome the odds of sorts, this kind of hero play. And of course this is, well, can be seen as quite strange in a sense, but also seen as quite admirable, to become the person to overcome things regardless. It's like, oh, like he did all this despite all these additional things, and was still able to be ranked amongst the best who did not have to face this level of adversity upon them. So it makes whatever achievements they achieve all the more greater in that sense. But yeah, especially when it comes to people that have actually wronged you, or like, when it comes to like systematic oppression, for example, it might be very easy to, just say, they did that to us, why should we care for them? The classic, at least was the classic eye for an eye kind of avenue. But imagine the greatness that can be achieved if one is to just try to lead by example rather than just reciprocate. So in essence, I can go into much of other things. Maybe something quite crude. Should I do it? Ah, fuck it. So let's say, for example, I don't know, you have a sexual partner who is quite inattentive and quite selfish, and maybe doesn't like to, you know, help you out, so to say, and you try and lead by example by, you you make a real effort to, get them off. Fuck it, we'll just say it, as this means of maybe this weird kind of guilt creation of sorts. But it's not really about making them feel guilty, but it's more about with the hope that if you treat them better than they've treated you, they'll reciprocate it. So, goes back to the classic, golden rule stuff, like treat others as you'd like be treated, but also to it's like this white kind of like positive peer pressure in order to like push each other to greatness. A thing I often say on this channel, by trying to outdo each other in good deeds and production, for example. This comes in the form of having a sexual partner, or being at university, or I don't know, driving safely on the road, perhaps. And that's quite important. That's quite a safety issue. But yeah, I always think about university because often me myself, I'm liable to things like stereotype threat, being like, black boy from the ends and whatnot. But I don't know if that pushes me to like kind of overdo things in a sense. And some days I'm like, I'll chill out. Maybe I won't talk so much in the seminar or something. But other days I'm like, fuck it. Like, I woke up in the morning, I put some clothes on. I'm not going to come here just to chill out. I came all the way from, my hometown and my background. I need to represent in some way. But, this also goes on to another rant I could have about the fact that you can still call someone like a tryhard at the university level. But that could go into another rant for days about how, why do we find it weird for people to really put an effort in, especially in like an academic situation. I mean, like, we're all here, we all took time out to, like, forget the money, we took time out to apply for this university and go to it. We took time out to apply for a job and go to it. Why not try as hard as possible? I don't think this should be conflated with going overtime for the sake of it, just for image. But if you have the time and if you're really dedicated, you naturally will try harder. Surely, right? Surely. And then maybe that's where stereotype threat comes in, because you want to kind of overcome it. But also, there's a sense of it could hold you back in a weird way. So you want to overcome it because maybe you feel like you don't want to be like everyone else, or you don't want to fall into that line of prejudice. But also, because of all that pressure, you're liable to mess up in other ways, maybe, for example. However, when we're talking about the fear of like prejudice, it also does have the liability to fall into the same trope or the same schema in which it seems that, like say minorities or other people who have been prejudiced against, often have to, rise up to this like level of like superhuman ability, or like they need to be excellent. They can't just be above average. They need to approach excellence in order to be recognized, sometimes recognized on the same level as, their above average counterparts. There's literature on the internet. Does it count as literature if it's not officially published? Maybe people who speak about the issue of, for example, black mediocrity is not allowed, or immigrant mediocrity is not allowed. Like, to be an immigrant, you must, to be recognized in some level, you have to be on this next level. Of course, this is not universally the case, but many people have said this is an issue they have faced, or in terms of getting recognized for their work. When you talk about, for example, Nobel Prizes, or talk about other things, it's like you're still living in this world where, other people, are still a step above you just by natural case of how integrated they are into being the average person or normal person, be it like a non-immigrant, for example, or I don't know, be it an athletic person in a sport, where the non-athletic player, for example, can provide so much more, especially in this case of okay, we'll take football as always. Berbatov may be forgotten about because his technical skill is world class and probably still is world class, but because he's not the classic, hard-working striker, he doesn't run a lot, he doesn't do a lot of that athletic stuff. So all you think about is, oh, he's lazy, but then he's only seen as great because he provides so much. It's clearly like by stats, like he scored 40 goals once he got into a good team. You know what I mean? But it's the fact that he had to rise above so much because of how we see or how what we reward or in the philosophy we have in like the English football game. Let's say he was playing in maybe Germany or Italy, he might be still seen as a world class player because of the schema around him rewards different things. This goes back to like how people can exist outside of the meta, and maybe the mainstream society struggles to, recognize the fact that they can still show value regardless of whether it is value in relation to the mainstream society, for example. But yeah, that was mostly what I was thinking about, the whole problem of attempting excellence, and also, is excellence the only thing that's allowed? Like, is excellence the threshold instead of just above average or doing your job? Is excellence the standard for the non-standard? The immigrant, for example, and how much of a problem is that? Is that a global thing? It doesn't seem like a. When I say global, I mean across society. But yeah, it's fun to be a hero when you succeed, but when you've been trying so hard, of course, some people may argue, why should I have to continually outdo myself? Why should I have to, play 1v9 on a basketball team? Why is this always the case? How can we push to make this no longer the case? And it feels much more like a social thing. Of course, this isn't a legal thing. A lot of things I do discuss are quite social things that might affect, political movements and stuff. But perhaps this is another argument for trying to see the value in, the other and the people. Obviously, I have my own biases about that, but it seems that, the fact that I'm making this video saying, oh, what if we could just outdo people who wrong us or outdo people who look down on us, shows, yet again playing into that idea of we outdo them in their battlefield, rather than creating, a more integrated, a more open, accepting, field of play, field of work, in which we can all be seen as prosperous individuals, perhaps. But yeah, lots of ideas about that, lots of thoughts. Why should we have to overperform constantly? Why should, yeah. But not much more to say. Without further ado, I'm gonna eat some more banana bread and try and do better next time. Maybe try and do amazing next time, although should I have to make better banana bread to be recognized as a good baker? Who knows?